So we're just getting started.
So my name is Denise Carew. I'm with CITL, and I'm going to introduce Patrick Wells. So Patrick is doing a session on toolkits, adding tactile experiences to improve synchronous e-learning. So I'm glad I'm here for this one. I chose to come here for this purpose, and I'm glad I'm introducing you, Patrick. If you have questions during the session, this is a hands-on session, so I would be fine to ask any questions you have during the session. And with that, I'll just lay it over to you, Patrick.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that the work that was done for this presentation occurred in Nunavut and the territory of Nunavut, several different schools. And I want to just acknowledge my students for helping me out with it by their presence and the work that they did. And their honesty was really appreciated. So they're going to be great teachers, sure. So anyway, thank you very much for coming. And so I just wanted to talk about this this particular problem that happened while I was teaching up in Nunavut. I was flown up in January to teach at 6 different hamlets. Okay, and I started in Inuit, and because of a miscommunication, we didn't get to do any work there. I missed going to Cambridge Bay. I got to Baker Lake for one night, but I was hardly at and Cambridge Bay, not Cambridge Bay, sorry, Rankin Inlet, and I managed to get some teaching done there in those spots. So it was great. And my last place I visited was Nunavut. Nunavut, I was there for 7 days. And fell in love with the place. So anyway, it was really cold, and we had problems with flying. So not surprisingly, and I went to Baker Lake, got there, met a student at the hotel, gave her the stuff for everybody, and then got back on the plane the next morning and left. So I only flew to Baker Lake to just be there. But anyway, as you'll see, it kind of worked out. Okay, because after I returned to the south, I had the kits distributed, and people that missed out on the synchronous lessons, they got to join in. And also, we did everything through the Baker Lake shell, so that when we did the lessons, they were recorded in Baker Lake. I added students to that as not deferred, but just as auditors. So that they could go in and watch the videos and stuff like that, because some people were ill and missed the class, this and everything. So there's a lot of like moving parts and things like that to try to make it happen. But I wanted to talk about this first lesson on Inuit Snow Goggles, and time permitting, we'll talk about coding. But they're all just science lessons, and they're all just processes. But each had their own physical manipulatives, which were really important for students. It was stressed to me the first time I taught in the fall semester, where I did activities with the students. And part of the problem was they didn't know what they had there. Right? One of the things that I learned when I was up at the Hamlets, first thing I did, like when I was a science teacher, when I was a researcher in science, I'd go into a lab and I'd just go and see everything. Go see everything, what's here. And later on, when we were doing these lessons with the Inuit and Baker Lake and other places, I could just tell people, like, yeah, just turn the camera sideways a little bit. Yeah, up on that shelf back there, that's where the clay is. And you're going to find the straws over here. So, yeah, it was really, and they really liked that I knew the spot. It was really well appreciated. So anyway, so let's talk about my favorite lesson that I've done, and that is Inuit Snow Goggles. So STEM, and so I was teaching STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So looking for math in science and engineering related things. So they did 3 lessons. We built a structure. They were given toothpicks, clay, and things like that. They had to build the tallest structure they possibly could with 15 toothpicks. Design challenge. The next one that we did coding. And then the last thing we did was the snow goggles lesson. And it was really popular with the students. Really popular.
What is
That's the name of the course. That's the STEM course. So it's
called STEM.
yeah, and so it's a 1/3 course. It's done at MUN that was offered at Nunavut Arctic College for credit. Good question. Okay, so we can go start the lesson. I'll click this. It's in the chat there, but I can just pop up here and click this. This is the lesson. What I'll do is I'll pass these out here. Just to be look at them. And this is a group-work lesson that's done by the students. And within STEM, we have this process called making. And the challenge was to make Inuit Snow Goggles. But I first need to introduce this technology because, you know, it is a cultural technology, but it also is one that is very important in terms of maintaining eye health, especially in the season, in the spring, when you can go to the flow edge and hunt seals and things like that. But you know, you can also hurt your retina. Like most people don't know that the fulvus centralis part of your eye is very, very tiny. And if you expose it to a lot of ultraviolet light, it can cause a snow blindness, which is a very, very painful and lasts for weeks. So thus, this technology was really important. So I got a couple questions for you. You all have mobile devices, and all the students at the hubs, they all have their own computers. So they have great internet there at times. Except when it's not blizzard. But they can also look things up. So here's a couple of questions for you. What are snow goggles? And lots of answers came up without even looking. I said, well, look and show me some pictures and things like that. And you know, how old is this technology? That was the question that was very controversial in terms of getting an answer. So if you were to look online and just search, how old are Inuit Snow Goggles? Be very hard pressed to find a good answer because there's lots of archaeological evidence out there for beyond 2,000 years. And one of the things that I came to know while I was up there is like, it's harsh. I went from here over to the library to the airport. When I got there, it was minus 50 plus with the wind chill. I got inside, I just took a sheet of ice off my face and put it on the floor. Literally a sheet of ice that formed my face. All right. Lots of people have scars from frostbite here in their cheeks. And especially people who don't have large cheeks, which is common feature right up there, which makes sense evolutionarily, but I don't want to get distracted by that. So we had talked about the design process before this, and I asked, like, so why was this innovation created? And again, the students gave lots of answers online. There were so many things in the chat, and I can't share the chat or the pictures with you because it's not ethical. But lots of responses, lots of personal experiences with snow blindness. One student told me about a person in her family who was still recovering from snow blindness, and this is like January, right? So, and we had talked about several things throughout the week, especially about this thing called albedo, which is a measure of reflectiveness, and how, one of the things that we talked about was how the green is moving further north because the permafrost is melting, and the green is not necessarily a good thing either, because what it does is because of its decreased albedo, it absorbs light energy. It makes the surrounding area warmer, which means Arctic foxes on the edge of the tundra are being pushed out by red foxes, which are moving further north. These are things that are happening right now in their lifetime, our lifetime. So do you think the creators follow the design process? Follow the design process, right? So again, lots of questions about that because we had visitors in our class, elders, who talked to us about CITL, which is a pseudo lamp. We had one elder come in who saw uvagūt, which is the channel you can watch on TV to keep up on things that are going on up north. And Billy Oktak, and he talked about many different things, famous hunter, trapper, and running dogs and sleds for hundreds of miles further north from Arviat when he was 12 years old. And sled dogs are basically wild animals, right? So for a 12-year-old to do that, but he came in and spoke for 2 hours, wasn't a peep, right? And you know, it's so great to have elders come in and do lessons like that, but then, you know, to think about it and to talk about, you know, Billy obviously used these because there wasn't any sunglasses back when he was starting out, right? And I never did ask him about that, but I'm sure my students have done that since then. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go through the process of making Inuit Snow Goggles, right? So you're going to need to Google a picture of them, all right? And we have the resources here to actually make snow goggles. And part of the STEM lesson of this is first making. So we're going to make an object that is a technology that will protect our lives. And then we're going to test the snow goggles using that. So we're going to design, you know, from various things. And so I have string here. So if you look on the internet, you can see all kinds of things. These snow goggles can be made from caribou antlers, usually driftwood, because it's so easy to work. You can make them from narwhal. You can make them from, you know, to me, the best thing to use would be caribou shoulder blade, which is a thin. There's a very thin bone there that you can work out. We don't have to do that. We have cardboard that is recyclable, and so what we need to do is follow the instructions are made in such a way in this lesson to get people to consider mathematical things like measurement, scale, things like that. So replicate the design of snow goggles so they fit your face. Measure your face to allow the goggles to rest on your nose by maximum light blockage from above and below. You know, and so like, again, how will you find these measurements? Because one of the things that's really common is, and there's a book that I read parts of, the hands measure, right? And measuring with hands is a great way to measure things because it's consistent, right? So in terms of science, it's perfectly valid. You don't need to use tape measures. And in fact, the first time we taught this lesson, we did area by hands, we did measurements by hands, we did fingers. Everything was done like that. We didn't, and so we'll go through that process now, and I'll just show you how to test quantitatively things without measuring, you know, measuring tapes. So let's get some cardboard. Come on up, get some cardboard, get some string. Yes, please.
I don't know where we're supposed to ask a question.
Anytime.
I'm just curious that this whole toolkit,
Mhm.
how did that materialize? Because, you know, years ago, I'm not sure, I don't know this course at all, so I'm not sure how it would have been before. Where did this idea of the toolkit emerge? What did you to create this?
As a research area for me, doctoral thesis, right? We looked at students, remote students here in Newfoundland, using electronic devices, which are, you know, measurement, the pH, temperature, motion, and we did the most difficult physics lab you can do remotely with students who were working with Vernier instruments, Lab Pro, and the sound, the device that measures acceleration and motion detector, what's called. Anyway, all these remote sites, the students are watched by other teachers. They are not science teachers. So the assumption was they can't expect the science teacher to teach them how to use the device, to make sure they set up the apparatus properly, safely. So we made videos for the students, right? And sent them the videos, right? And we did a study on how the lessons work. It's called a lesson study. But to me, it's more interesting to see how the videos work. And when we first logged in, the students to start one lab activity, which is a practice activity, they'd already been playing for an hour. So the videos work really well. But what they did was give access to the answer, which is the most important part of it. So I do all kinds of videos for students, things like that. But when I first taught the 3273 course, which is a different science course, I did videos and struggled, even though we had a common textbook and common notes, did activities and you know, and do all kinds of like common, one was called the mitten. So, you know, and this is a misconception for young students because these are elementary school teachers teaching science. So put a mitten on the desk, monitor outside, monitor inside. Before we do that, predict what is going, where is the temperature going to be highest? And the biggest misconception is going to be inside the mitten, but mittens are insulators. So until they do that, you know, they did that hands-on themselves, right? And again, Maria, I can't remember the last name. The Hands Measure. On the cover of the Hands Measure is a pair of beautiful mittens, right? And they're covered in fish skin, which makes them work. And I asked my students, I said, what is the pattern? What is that pattern on mittens? They said, oh, that's scales. The scales are taken off. It's fish skin. It's waterproof. I said, okay, thanks. And I learned so much from my students. But the kids came from that idea, and they're not using anything electronic up there. But like I'm teaching the 3273 courses again in 2 weeks. I already sent kids up for that course, and there's like sent 20 kids up, so each individual student will get a kit. There's all kinds of things like we're doing pendulum activities, there's magnets, there's the design challenge, there's all these things that are hands-on. And again, I couldn't share the pictures with you with my students, but like, you know, when they made their snow goggles, they were so proud of it, right? And if you just look through the document. So I'd like you to try to make them just for fun. It won't take you very long, but because then we get to test them. Then we get to see the real challenge of this lesson was actually doing the testing while because the students are at the hub. They're in the hub, right? So they see me up there, right? And I can see them and I can shift my camera, right? And but they can send me pictures, right? But making sure that they get the testing part of the technology done, which is really important. Which, for their students, it's like, you know, think about, you know, trusting technology, testing technology, seeing if it works. Why does it work? It leads to so many questions, but it's also hands-on. That's the big thing I preface this with my title is that, you know, if we want to just go back in time, like humans, all of us, we're living in a horizon, which means we haven't changed for 100,000 years physiologically. That means neurophysiology, that means gut physiology, circulatory, we haven't changed. Our world around us has changed because of language and learning and knowledge, but we are still that thing from 100,000 years ago. And that thing 100 years ago learned in circles like this. This is how we learn. We learn touching, seeing, feeling, smelling, tasting, all our senses. Those are all primary in what we were doing. And our brain is set up and still set up to use sensation to form and do what is called in psychology long-term potentiation when we make memories. And it works far better when we use multi-senses and when we work socially, instead when we learn socially.
Does that mean we should be using this tool better growth students, not just?
No, it's I mean,
Because I love the toolkit, because I am special education, we're all about. You start there. Would you recommend that?
well, the research says that, you know, doing hands-on, doing simulations combined is better. Right? But they're looking at big numbers, these are quantitative numbers, but, you know, but doing both is better than doing one or the other. So doing the hands-on, doing, you know, things like one of the coding lesson is an online lesson. But they also did robots face to face. Right? So that gives more experiences, different contexts. Again, context is also huge for memory problems. And in good teachers, we're in the memory business. This is what we do. So by changing context, making context unique, so I'm sure you can think of one day. Think of the most memorable lesson that was a good lesson. Some of them are bad. You know, I've had trainer lessons before, right? But like, I mean, it's probably going to involve not sitting down in a classroom. It's probably going to involve other people, your peers. It's not going to be some oration by a teacher, although I do remember like the gold part, the alpha particle, and gold foil experiment that was exchanging in my chemistry I was testing. But this is very rare. Remember, like the Lord Rutherford experiment. More often, again, we're set up to remember things based on competitiveness, making use of senses, and you know. But then once you have those sensations, then things start to, you know, think of constructiveness, like what we already know comes up and helps us do more. So then we can rely less and less on sensation.
So would it be appropriate, just as an assignment, to have students, teachers, candidates, create kits?
Yeah, they create a lesson as part of this course and the other courses. They do create a lesson. And they have to reflect on it, which is another important thing, reflecting on what we do. So, you know, I reflected upon this experience to make the kits that I'm going to use for the next course. Right? And plus knowing what I know it's already out there. Right? And I've sent 4 places. There's more hubs than that out there. But, you know, I can get, the students are very cooperative and like, just turn me this way, turn me that way. Right? And, you know, it's funny, like they're all literally sitting here like this. And I can send a private chat to somebody and say, you're on your phone a lot. And like, it's like, it's just like the slow motion, like, right? You know, but, and like, you know, things happen in the north, right? And I just go, we were in the middle of doing this particular lesson. Phone started buzzing. So what's going on? And the wind chill had gone below -15, so the school was. So then to go get the kids, right? So they went, so we're picking up tomorrow. That's it. Right? So, anyway, I don't know how we're doing for time.
Is that 1:34?
That's fine. So you can try to make these on your own if you want, we just forego it. But I mean, the thing is, okay, and if you look at, you go to page 3. So page 2 is so let's just go back to page 2. So on page 2, I'm looking at the images. Test the goggles using math. I don't know if you can see that or not, but we're on that part of it. I'm just sorry, one question on. So we're looking at that, and one of the things that we did was, if you take the goggles, and I don't have mine with me, but you come up to, and again, this is measure but not measure. So I come up and I put my arms like this against the wall, and I draw a dot right there, and I say, okay, look at the dot, and then have your friend trace where you can see. Right? Then put your snow goggles, do the same thing. Right? And it's obvious from the activity that, you know, without measuring, you can see, oh, there's a difference. Well, how much of a difference is there? This is where the math person convinces, you know, got to do math when you're doing science, because As a teacher, you gotta do math every day. You're not gonna do science every day. So if you want to get the most out of your science experiences, get more math, do more math, do STEM. The kids are basics. So, and you can see there, okay, so again, standard, and this is again following scientific process. This bent double, standardized measure. Same thing every time. So we talk about the nature of science. The dot in the center, and then looking at what it seems rather strange that they're drawing a rectangle. Right? When you do the field of vision for your regular eye, it winds up being an oval. It's an oval. When you use the snow goggles, it winds up being a ring. Right? And you know, so then you get to have a conversation over how did that happen? Well, you know, you see what light comes into your eye. That which can't get in, you don't see. So, and then we got to again. So then we're talking geometry now. Right? And if you wanted to go further, snow goggles, you could get a protractor like this, and you can literally look through your snow goggles, mark the angle, you can mark how much light was cut down, do percentage by comparing the areas, you can do percentage by comparing the angles. So we're doing again, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and angles and geometry. Let's do this. So the students really, really valued that in terms of, you know, they saw the value. But the real value was looking at what they go to the third page, which is the extension of STEAM, okay, which is where you add arts to science. And when you express yourself, it's different. Your brain is different when you draw, right? You're not receiving, you're getting feedback from your own body as you draw, right? So it was my idea was to say, well, this is my example. This is a terrible problem. But when I was somewhere, you can look up for images of owls, and the art is just absolutely beautiful. I'm so taken by it. I came into the airport in Inuit, and I just like big owls and like stylized, and you know, so owls up in north called ïțᒑᒃ. That's the owl, and the raven, which you also see piles. It's called ïţulagak, and there is a story about how ïţulagak and ïțᒑᒃ got their colors. So, and it's the Inuit legend is that ïţulagak was able to paint ïțᒑᒃ in lovely patterns because ïțᒑᒃ was very patient, stood still and rotated and opened his wing and things like that. But then when it came time to paint ïţulagak, ïțᒑᒃ got frustrated because ïţulagak was moving all over the place anyway, so he just went boom. So there was no patterns. So that's the legend. But like, so that in itself, and again, I would love to show you pictures, but students drew language, shapes like so, you know. So they drew loose on their snow goggles. They drew customary tattoo patterns on their goggles. It was just like it was the best, right? And but plus of that, again, memories are even stronger. And so all these different sensations from that one lesson. But you know, what it does is it contributes to the memory formation for the math I'm trying to talk about, the science I'm trying to talk about in terms of the effects on the eye. You know, it's still people still have problems with, you know, and students I taught here at grade 10 have problems with, you know, remembering what a beat is. It's a measure of reflectiveness. Shouldn't it be absorption? Everybody thinks about absorption. No, it's not. When you're out going to the flow edge, there's still lots of snow on the ground. It flattens out because when it'll compress down, right? It's a real problem. So this is a known problem, known technology, and they were able to create it. And this lesson was done within an hour. The whole thing. It was just incredible how they plowed. Right? I mean, and I could show you images like just everybody there modeling, like, you know, 5 students lined up against the wall with their snow goggles. Right? It was the best. But it was also served a fourth purpose. It served a purpose for them too, to talk about, you know, how to make, and they try as much as they can to make cultural connections to teaching. That's why we brought elders in, but also, you know, I could show you pictures of the different sites, and you're seeing cultural objects everywhere, which is so important, given what had happened culturally up in the north. But also, you know, to protect language, to increase language, and I forgot to mention AT, the word that's let's go. That was in my first slide. So AT, and it is an incredibly difficult language to speak. But they have the same. They have this thing called IQ principles. We don't have here, but basically, you know, these principles are guidelines for what we should do as a person. So there's books on IQs. Why you become the time gate? This little gate, your gate has to come from the back of your throat. But it's a big word. It's like a sentence in one word. This lesson also fits in with IQ principles. It promotes culture. It promotes building and skill building, which are parts of IQ, right? Sharing and working together is part of IQ, right? So it also made lots of connections beyond the curriculum that's very bad. But in the curriculum, IQ principles are present in the curriculum for students, right? Especially, you know, and we have the same thing here, but not in terms of like how you learn, but like skills are more and more in vogue, right? Science, in math, things like that. And being able to build, and I guess I'm going to have a little bit of time to talk about coding. This is another thing that was the same thing. If I just, I'm going to pop back to my slideshow, which is coding was another thing that was really enjoyed by students. Okay, there's Snow Goggles link. We're going to build and test. We didn't bother to test. That's okay. Coding. Coding is huge. You hear about coding in schools all the time, right? But coding is just giving things directions for them to follow, basically, right? But to make it hands-on is really important for me. So I brought these on board. This is a coding mouse. I call it a coding mouse. These are the cards for coding. It's always important. And there are little notes in here. I had 4, I left 3 out. I just kept this one. Send it to I promise to send it to an active presentation. But this little mouse, you turn it on, and you can tell it what to do. But really important coding is not just go to this right away. Right? What you tend to do is take the cards to get the idea of coding and telling this thing what to do and what you want it to do. So you say, okay, so I want your group to make a design challenge or a coding challenge for this to get this mouse to do a certain thing. So they set up mazes, right? And they would take the coding cards like this is for what is it? It's left turn, right? And in order to get back to going where you are, you have to do 2 left turns. So they set up these coding courses with these. Then they would enter this into the mouse. The mouse would then go off and do its thing, but there were always mistakes. bugs in code, right? So that's part of coding too, right? Is actually finding bugs and fixing them. So then they figured out what they did wrong, and then they started writing things out, which is what you really have to do. You can't just use cards. And so again, you're writing, not just you're using cards and you're using this device. It's not exercise and things like that. Again, it is sensory experience. It starts though with this little experience here. Anybody play Angry Birds before? Okay, so in Angry Birds, and I won't show you, but like in Angry Birds, coding is set up, it's called Scratch. And what we do is you get the bird to go get the pig. And so we would have to build the code, test the code. You don't get the bird, if you don't get the pig, you have to go back and redo the code again until you get a proper pig. Right? And of course, as you're going through, there are 6 lessons in this, and I won't go to the site, but I'll just take a second. It only takes a second to go to the site. I'll just open this in a new tab. So this one, I won't watch the video, but I'll go to step 2 and just show you. It starts off really simple. And so, and you follow the instructions. Here's the bird, and look, it has to go 1, 2, 3 steps this way. So I'm gonna go west. And actually, if I did this one, I could do it this, I could pull this down here, do that, and I can go this. I want to get fancy and do this. I can go hit run. Okay, and the crowd goes wild. I hate it when children play this game. Anyway, but there's levels to that in the progressions, and then you get onto this, all right? But this by itself is not as good as this with this. Again, the research shows that, right? Some people love this. There are students that can do remote courses. It's all they want to do. Loved remote courses, loved it, right? Because as a student, I could just plow through. I had a student who was working on projects, and she just, boom, did them all. And I said, okay, you're done, you're done the course, you can carry on. You can go to, you're complete. Did all her projects, everything like that. They were all there to do, and I could support her online to do it. Not everybody's like that, right? But, to be, I guess respectful of that diversity is a good thing, because we can get more things done. So now if I just scroll down here, and I just showed you that one, that was the exact one. Okay, now the kits. I didn't have enough robots. So I had a friend in Iqaluit who loaned me 2 of her B-bots so that the students in Iqaluit could use B-bots, because I was on the road with all the coding mice. So, and again, they're doing the coding, they got the camera, they're showing me the stuff. It was great. And it really solidified for me the fact that I will never, ever teach a science course online again without having like some kind of kit there. Because again, you standardize everything. I know we're going to do pendulum experiments and stuff like that. All kinds of experiments I sent them up seeds. That's the first thing you're going to do, plant some seeds. Everybody's seeds are going to grow. That's the great thing about it, but they're going to talk about it, and it's a story. On the West Coast, when I taught this exact course, I had them growing right away. There's some good seeds. Where'd you get those from? They're from the grocery store. So, are they going to grow or not? Half the class said, those are going to grow. Those are for eating. Oh, great. The beans you bake and the beans, they're alive till you cook them and kill them. Right? So, but I mean, that is another, we were face to face and get to, and then again, measuring all the time. So again, once they start to grow, they're gonna document days before germination. Then after germination, they're gonna graph the growth daily, right? And they're gonna have to water a little bit every day, same amount. So, and that kind of thing. And the example is, you have to teach your students to be responsible. Then you get, oh, you're so irresponsible. You want to teach them to be responsible? Something alive, make them take care of it. We teach all kinds of things, like empathy, right? Physiology, basic plant anatomy, right? So, but all those things come from doing things with kids. And let me just see now, there's the, I had to double this up for the students because this is from the show that I showed them. Okay. So what about you now? These questions for you. What about your experiences? You know, from your teaching experiences, do you think doing things, physical objects but also socially is important? The lowest number of students I had at each one was 2, so they still get to work together. Like, you know, E.O. Wilson is a famous quote. He's a very famous evolutionary biologist. 1 ant is no ant. 2 ants, got something, right? Because they're social insects. We're social things too, right? We're social species too. So if you're going to do something like this, I think I'd love to go off and I'd love to write a postdoc about this. Just go, oh, I'd like to go look at this, see what could happen. Because it was like during the pandemic, we did kits, things like that. You know, we haven't done anything like that since. And I think we sort of maybe taking our foot off the gas when it comes to learning, because we're looking at a smaller group. Okay, any questions or comments? Go ahead.
So the kit, this particular kit, goggles is there's a lot of pieces to it. This one here is specific pieces.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the value is in creating goggles or in actually using goggles, and therefore, could you give students goggles and get the same learning?
It's a good question. Yeah.
You know, where is I love the tactile part, making the goggles. A lot of benefits from it, but
If you want,
if they had goggles, would the lesson be as complete?
it would be, it's hard to say because in the end, when they have the creative parts of it, it's like, how can we measure how much that's going to contribute to the members of the lesson? Really good question. Sounds like a quantitative research project. I love it. I've taught that lots.
If you have these kids in the north and they could, over the lifespan, at some point end up being from the land, and then stuff, it's happened. And now the weather patterns have changed and now it's apparent they need snow goggles or they're going to have snow blindness. And so knowing how to fashion these themselves rather than have them, you know, in their knapsack or backpack, being able to physically manipulate the elements of the environment around them. Okay, so there are mathematical, pedagogical, implications to your lesson that are brilliant in and of themselves. There, but then there's also a beautiful life lesson, and then there's the whole cultural identity piece that's tied into it, and the artistic expression of it.
I felt like that was an extension.
Yeah.
For the.
Yeah.
Start at kind of any point. Anyway, the extension, you want to do a simpler one, more simple activity, you can have it already. Right, if you want to extend it, you can extend it on the beginning, not just on the end, where they're actually creating. Yeah.
Right.
So I think like students, they do that creativity. And some can sometimes with a simple one, but some can be more complicated and show how creative they are. So that is how the difference we can see with the students. Like one is just simple, and that means that he may not be interested in that particular thing, like hands-on and all. He may be into some other things, but some other students may be someone who can try to be more creative into that and try to more go into depth with regards to that and all those things.
Yeah. I always come from a background from the outcome in mind.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea of the extension because the outcome is to see the measurement and all that sort of thing. And then you could extend it the way you've extended it here, or you could extend it in front end.
Yeah, that's what the lesson, this lesson itself was the model for the lesson that they had to present, but but I told them, I said, this is a really big lesson. I said, you need to take your one extension, how you're gonna do it, like, so I said, so, and it worked. And, you know, it was a good model that, you know, and I said, we made a template that cut everything down. So one extension, what's your evaluation? One of the things that I didn't get to see, but the prior learn statement is a really good thing for all students, old and young, to get to be self-reflective and, you know, to be metacognitive. And that's another word that I have to talk about with this lesson. Like, students have to be metacognitive. They have to think about their thinking. You know, it's one of those things that it's the Greeks.
An observation I have, my kids and kids, great kids. It's an Indigenous studies class, and we're being asked to incorporate Indigenous elements into, well, especially to me, incorporate Indigenous elements into courses. And a lot of the students were quite upset about that. No, don't do that. Just like the PowerPoints, write essays. You know, we prefer that because we know how to do, we don't know how to make it fit, and we don't know how to select elements and justify those selections. So it was a bit of a tug of war. I brought in kids from the rooms, showed them the World War I kits and different things, and over there. They would just absolutely love this. It's so cool, hands-on. Most did not like, which surprised me quite a bit.
Interesting.
Because they weren't comfortable, they were comfortable doing PowerPoints and, you know, Googling everything and that's,
So I was looking forward to talking.
yeah.
And my three children went with me on a full 10-day battlefield tour, in like, so, you know, that, like, they would lose their minds about these battlefield kids, things like that, so.
Yeah, it was great, just, I thought this is, that's me out. This is
Yeah.
perfect. Some dug in, and then at the end of the day, they realized this was really hard in a way. But they came away with a kit that they could then share with their colleagues, like they actually had something to take into schools.
Mhm.
It's about residential schools, not this, like, which is. It's not. Anyway, that's why I came to this talk. This is, your approach matches Indigenous approaches to teaching. So, say, it's just normal.
It's the anachronism approach.
So that's why
Consensus and, like, you know, sharing and, you know, and supporting each other and working together. I just was shocked. Just, oh, well.
I guess I'll try it again.
Well, yeah, and, you know, and again, one of the things with UDL is giving you choice too, right? But, you know, why are they making that choice? It's another good project, right? Why don't you choose not to do that?
Well, because every other education course was a PowerPoint. You do PowerPoint and you have a little group presentation, and then you do a book review.
Yeah.
And then you do an annotated bibliography or whatever. Well, we're not doing that. What?
A perfectly
Something
acceptable.
to clarify, the students, how they they send those things whether they like the especially when it is science, then they would love hands-on. But if it is something different, I feel that they are more into the presentation, they are more into writing and all those things, more than hands-on. So it also depends on the students and all those.
They called it, Lori, we didn't like your arts and craft approach. To crafts, that we were building, making.
That's why you always need, one of the biggest rules of PF is you do the lessons that the students are going to do. So that you take away that appreciation of, like, what is their perspective?